Now that your guests have selected your property, you need to clearly define how they should behave during their stay. You want them to treat your property with care and understand what they can and cannot do whilst on the premises. To promote the right behavior, many OTAs leave room on your profile for you to define and include your house rules. Most guests are extremely courteous and won't be an issue. However, you will encounter a few that might misbehave. I have hosted over 30,000 guests and only ever needed to ask them to leave the property, retain the deposit, request extra funds about 20 times, which is a very low ratio. In relation to house rules, you can pretty much set any that you consider valid, as long as they are not contrary to any laws. You cannot, for example, discriminate against race or prohibit the use of guide dogs for the visually impaired. House rules will always be crucial, both for you as a host and for your guests. However, there are some properties that need to give even more importance to this area of the profile. Number 1 on the list are properties that can be used for hosting large or young groups, due to them becoming quite loud and excitable. Next up are those properties which are unique in their setup, for example, having a pool. In this case, guests will need to follow the instructions on how to use the amenities. For example, not to switch on all the pumps at all hours of the day. Should the property be located near the local nightlife, your guests may be encouraged to go out and drink alcohol and return to the property at a late hour, potentially disturbing the neighbors. You need to be clear that this is definitely not allowed. If the property is located within a home ownership association or condominium, there may be particular block rules that you will need your guests to adhere to. And should vacation rentals be frowned upon in your area, you might not want to draw too much attention to your operation. In this case, the importance that house rules are strictly followed is amplified. By listing the house rules on the online profile, you are providing a greater opportunity to involve the OTA, should there be a clear breach in your guest behavior standards. Very often, the OTA will then be in a position to assist you with addressing such guest behavior. Should you personally welcome your guests, you may also wish to mention the house rules upon arrival. Unfortunately for them and for you, your neighbors are likely to be the ones to inform you if guests are breaking any house rules. As for breakages, your cleaners will be the ones to notice most of these once the guests have departed. Should any damages be noted, immediately contact the guest through the OTA and advise them that they will need to pay for such damages. Some of the main issues that you may need to refer to the house rules during your guest interaction include being strict about check-in time. If your guest shows up before the previous guests have left or the place is not yet clean, the guest will have a negative first impression of the property. Following on this, be strict about the checkout time, as it creates extra admin for you, having to inform the cleaners and moving things around should you have a last-minute booking. Some hosts also charge late checkout fees. You should definitely include a rule that prohibits non-registered guests into the property. This is a very popular transgression for properties that have a charge per person staying there. Without it, guests would book for 2 people and then 5 would show up. If you are going to charge separately for utilities, do mention it in this section, including how much you will charge. Personally, I like to take the readings on arrivals and only charge extra if they exceed a certain usage. When it comes to no smoking house rules, I find that prohibiting this serves the widest demographic. Unfortunately, it is super hard to prove. I had once tried to file a claim that the guests were smoking and had pictures of full ashtrays, and the bank still wanted proof that they were smoking inside the property. The property stank of cigarette smoke, and they declined my claim for funds. You may wish to consider charging guests for various time-consuming transgressions, such as key replacement fees. Include a clause relating to garbage collection, as some localities have specific garbage collection times or procedures. It can be costly when you, as the host, may need to dispose of the garbage through alternative means. Noise complaints are a common occurrence when groups of 5 or more are gathered in a property. To address this, I always include a rule for no parties and follow up with a specific clause that guests ought to be quiet after 10 or 11 p.m. In the house rules, I always state that transgression of any house rule may lead to eviction. As an example, I would state, kindly note that not complying to the rental and house rules might, in certain cases, lead to an immediate termination of the rental agreement on our part without any refund. This clause acts as your ultimate buffer should things get out of hand. When I had first started managing property, one of my first clients called me saying that she received a noise complaint from the neighbor. I immediately called the guests and told them that they need to quieten down as we are receiving complaints. 20 minutes later, we received another call from the neighbors. This time, the tenants refused to answer, and so I decided to head over there. I found a wild party in full swing, with over 20 people spilling out into the street. I entered the common area and saw even more people lining the staircase. When I actually entered the apartment, I found the guys who booked the place and gave them a crazy talking to. They got rid of all the party guests so that we could inspect the apartment. Luckily, there were no damages. A bonus tip. Should you need to enforce the rules and the guest is not being compliant, and you feel the need to involve the booking platform, always present yourself as the loving, diligent host that you are. When the rules are broken, you need to check how severely you will be enforcing them. But do remember that your guests are on holiday, and should they complain, in most cases, you won't be able to remove the negative review.